Thursday, but on Wednesday. As you can see, Mofi is not here.
Yeah.
It's just me and a special guest, Pooja. She's going to be teaching us today about Node-RED. So,
Hi
take it
guys.
away.
Yeah, so I work with Mofi and Nick here in New York, and we have been working on some really fun stuff. So something that I really work on a lot and advocate for is Node-RED. And I wanted to take this time to kind of walk you guys through, walk Nick through a little bit of what exactly it is and how we can use it to build some really fun flows. And just, we'll try to fly this drone by the end of the talk and, kind of give you guys an idea of what this tool consists of and how you guys can use it to build some really cool things. So in New York, I usually give workshops and meetups on how to prototype with Node-RED. And honestly, it's such a great tool to prototype as well as to build different applications and to test and learn tech really quickly. And I love it because it's not only a tool that allows you to be a very experienced developer. It takes developers of all levels to kind of work and build some interesting things. So I'm going to kind of walk you guys through a few slides and talk to you guys about Node-RED, and then we'll get into some flows, and we've built a few really interesting things with Node-RED, and we'll work through how those are created. So so as I mentioned,
Is PowerPoint going?
Yep. Node-RED is like a wonderful tool for prototyping, and not only can you prototype the Internet of Things with Node-RED, like different devices and web services, you can build different web applications as well. So it's actually a flow-based programming tool for the Internet of Things, and it's actually run on a Node.js runtime. So everything that's built using Node-RED is built on top of Node.js. So if you have an idea of Node.js and how to work with Node.js, you'll be really familiar with Node-RED. And so within Node-RED, there is some palettes that you can use to build different things. And I want to kind of just talk a little bit more about the history of it and how it kind of came to be. So Node-RED, it was created in 2013 by some IBMers, and it was this open source tool that over time, by 2018, has gained over 1 million installs. So it's really popular. A lot of people use it for hobby workshops. They use it for doing a lot of automation. And the most beautiful thing about it is the kind of community it has around it. There's over, at this point in 2019, there's like over 3,000 different nodes created, so many contributors, so many flows that are contributed. So it's a great place to explore and start, and especially if you're looking to build things, it's you have a really awesome community around it. So the way it's created is like flow-based programming. And flow-based programming, not only does it take, what it kind of consists of is like a black box where you're passing messages through asynchronously. So, if we were to think about why we would use a tool like Node-RED, it's kind of similar to like, maybe an out-of-the-box kit, such as like Microsoft Word, where we're building things out of the box and having people build flows without having to know what all the code is that goes behind it. So let me kind of show you what a Node-RED flow looks like. So this is an example of like a very simple Node-RED flow. So here we have nodes, and we connect those to other nodes. So it's like a black box almost. And then messages are passed through each node and to create some sort of like end output. So yeah, I mean, so instead of you guys writing that code in, Node.js, or, even writing your own HTML or CSS or creating web browsers or any code that goes into creating IoT devices and controlling them, instead of you doing that, you can actually, there's this pre-packaged nodes that allow you to, pass that information along.
So like, are each one of these nodes like a kind of like a function, I guess?
Yeah, so they are kind of like functions. So, once we kind of go into it, I'll show you what a few of them look like. But, there's nodes to input, text. There's nodes to input strings as, as trigger nodes, as well as there's nodes that can do some sort of functionality, such as function nodes. So, for example, there's a node here where it's passing through a payload of some text, and that is being translated over another node, which is doing some sort of process on top of it, which lets you push around the output of the message that's being passed around. So, if we take, for example, this example, we're passing a payload. For example, Jedis are totally amazing. And then if we have a node right here that is doing some sort of text analysis or sentiment analysis, that can do that. Instead of you having to write out that algorithm, that node itself is doing the algorithm for you and passing on what that sentiment score is like.
And so I think people can't see our mouse. So the center node is kind of getting passed information from like the node in the top left, right?
Right.
Okay.
Which is, relaying it as an output. So, I think one of the best things about, sorry, I'll go back, about Node-RED is that these nodes, what do they consist of, I think you and we worked up together on building our own nodes as well, which is another thing that you can do with Node-RED, especially if you don't see a node that has the behavior that you want. These nodes are pretty simple because they're created in Node-RED as you have the Node.js file, where you can put the functionality of the node you want to create, as well as the HTML file, which actually shows how where you can put in, what inputs do you want for the node, what you want the node to look like, and also what you want the node to pass through. So that's basically what is a Node-RED node. And so a lot of them are pre-created for you, but if you don't see something that you like or use, you can actually create your own, and you can you basically create it and then ship it up to NPM, and that's what makes this open source for everyone else to use.
So it's like just like any other node package, you just NPM install it, and then you have your nodes in like your Node-RED stuff.
Yep, exactly.
Very
so
cool.
You can build nodes and ship them up to NPM, and that way you're contributing to open source, and you can other folks around the world can use your node as well. So we tried doing a little bit of that with video streaming, and we'll probably show you guys like an idea of what that looks like a little bit later. So yeah, and then once they're on Node-RED on NPM, they actually exist on the Node-RED library. So this is a great place to actually go ahead and search for whatever node you want to use, and then you can put that into your flow. So yeah, it's a great, Node-RED is great because, like I mentioned, not only is it are you able to run it on, a cloud platform, but you're also able to run it on like devices like Raspberry Pis. So actually, each Node-RED flow comes installed with a Raspberry Pi image. So when you do install an Node-RED locally, you should be able to use it with a Pi as well.
Yeah, actually, I just got a Raspberry Pi, and yeah, there's like a little Node-RED thing in the menu.
Yeah, so it's really cool. So, the possibilities are really endless with what you can build, but I think we'll go through like a a few examples just to have you guys get an idea. And this is like a really easy working example of how this kind of works. So on the side, we have some input nodes. We can drag those out, and it's just a matter of connecting an input node with a output node, and then clicking on deploy to see how your nodes run. So I think I want to kind of show like a few examples of what this looks like, and kind of walk through a Node-RED editor. And I have a few examples to show like the basics of this. So yeah. Okay, awesome. So, oops. All right. So I'll just expand this.
A bit small.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so yeah.
It's gonna cut off.
Oh, no worries. I think that might be better, right? Okay, cool. Awesome. So this is an example of a Node-RED editor, and I've actually installed this through the IBM Cloud. So the way that, there's a lot of instructions out there on how to install them through the IBM Cloud, but basically what you'd want to do is go to cloud.ibm.com, and then once you log in to cloud.ibm.com, if you go to your catalog, and within your catalog, you should be able to see, search for Node-RED. Oops, sorry. Node-RED. And then you should see this Node-RED starter kit. And when you create the Node-RED starter kit, that will allow you to create a version of Node-RED. So it's pretty easy to get started, especially when you guys go through the IBM Cloud. And I'll talk about some of the really great reasons why you want to do it through the IBM Cloud, because you could create your, the data you could send up to the cloud, which is really important, and to share.
Is there a free tier or is it just paid?
So there is a free tiered. I know that with this account, it just shows a default, but if you go and create an IBM Cloud account, you can actually create a light version of Node-RED and be able to use it as a free tier and be able to use certain services and play around with it for sure. So it's really great using that, and that's how I got my editor. That's right here. So within the editor, there's a few different things that are really important. So the input nodes, as you see right here, these nodes let you inject data. So you can either inject strings, you can inject, information for a HTTP endpoints, you can inject links. And you can also inject some IoT devices, which is like really interesting. And then there's output nodes, which, for example, a debug node will allow you to debug whatever messages that are coming through, as well as HTTP response nodes.
So is debug kind of just like a log, like it logs it somewhere?
Yeah, exactly. So like a debug, if you were to think about like a console.log, that's kind of what a debug node does. So let me just, start with a blank slate here. So hold on. I have a lot of flows because I've been playing around with this for a while. Let's see. So many flows.
Wow, you do have a lot of flows.
I know, too many flows. But this just kind of shows like, that you can build a lot of different things like independently of one another on both the cloud and as well as locally. So also installing Node-RED on the cloud, you get like some really cool other API functions that I'll talk about a little bit later. But for another really cool node that I really like is like a Twilio output node. So you can actually hook up SMS and send like text to people. So that's like a fun IoT example. And then you have function nodes, which actually allow you to create your own JavaScript block of code to manipulate the input nodes. So, and then of course you have the social nodes, which let you get data from like Twitter, from your email, and you can manipulate those. There's storage, also Cloud. I want to point out Cloudant because Cloudant, when you create your instance of Node-RED, it also creates an instance of Cloudant for you. So you can actually store your data on the spot and manipulate it that way. And so there's a lot of really, you don't have to work on like creating an account with any other data service. You can just kind of use it while you create your own, while you have this like cloud version of Node-RED. And then some of the most fun nodes that I like to use are like the weather insight nodes, which do like the weather analysis. There's predictive analysis nodes, so there's a little bit of AI going on. Dashboard nodes are great when you don't want to create your own UI. You can actually have this create like a UI for you, which is really fun. And then, of course, the IBM Watson nodes. And these nodes, you get them custom when you create a cloud account. And there's a lot of really fun things in here like language translator, speech to text, like natural language classifier, visual recognition. So, you can do a lot with the AI that is available on IBM Cloud and, kind of use that as your input. And I mean, imagine creating that block of code, like writing it out. I feel like that could get really complicated, especially when you're like a beginner trying to like learn and like, build some cool things. Having these like pre-built blocks make that whole process a lot easier.
So for these like Watson ones,
yeah.
Are they like pre-bound to like your cloud account? So do you have to like put in your API key stuff, or how does that work?
Yeah, so when you create a Node-RED instance on IBM Cloud, you will have to like go on IBM Cloud and get the service that you're interested in. So if you are interested in like, for example, like language translator, you'll have to go get that service and then put in those API keys.
Okay, so it doesn't like automatically pull that?
Yeah, so it is. You do have to be able to, because I think with IBM Cloud, especially on the free account, I think it's almost limited to like 4 or 5 free services, which allow you to do a lot, especially with Node-RED, and get the data that you need. So I think that's a good way to kind of like use these type of nodes because you do have them on your fingertip when you are using them on the cloud version. But yeah, so let's kind of walk through building something really simple in Node-RED. So like if I were to take an inject node, all I needed to do is actually drag it out. And I can actually manipulate this node and give it a timestamp, give it a string, give it some numbers. So let's do the, let's try to do the traditional hello world when we first start programming. So if we want to see what a hello world in Node-RED looks like, all we have to do is kind of build out a string and put in hello world as our input. And then let's say we want to console.log it, which is actually our debug node. We would kind of just do this, and we would just drag our debug node, and we would connect our hello world string to our debug node. And then, by the way, this is our debug panel, and this is where we would see the text that we were hoping for. So if we confirm that, which you have to confirm, you have to deploy it, which shows that you've kind of committed to that code, which every time you make changes, you'll have to redeploy. This is where once you inject that string, you should be able to see that string payload. So this is a really simple example. It took us like 2 nodes to do, and there's a lot we can grow when we do this from here. Another really great example I like to show is like a functionality node. So for example, this is using a function node. And like I mentioned, a function node uses like, you can actually manipulate the JavaScript that's inside a function node. So, here I just kind of wanted to do a simple replace of the string. And, this, when I connect this function node to my hello world nodes via just connecting them, when I do the deploy on this, I should be able to see that live hello world string replacement. So that's just like a really simple example on how you can use like function nodes. So, just being able to like wrap things together pretty easily and then deploying them, it just shows how like useful something like Node-RED could be.
And so I assume so since this is like Node-RED on IBM Cloud,
right?
Anything you put on here, is this like it's accessible, like it's almost like a server?
Yeah.
So could you like serve like a website through Node-RED that other people could access?
Totally. So I mean, I have a really like very brief example of how you could do that. So like, let's say you wanted to create a web page, you could write some HTML, CSS, some JavaScript. You could create a web page that way, or you could use like 3 nodes and create a web page by using Node-RED by connecting a HTTP input node and then putting in the URL you want your web page to exist on. And for example, I did mine as HW for Hello World, and then putting in a template node where you can actually write the HTML that you're interested in. And in this case, I've created a div where I have like, some H1s, and then, I also have some sort of input that I've created. And I've also added some custom JavaScript here where I'm taking the, I also have a button in here as well, some input submit button, where I'm actually putting that and submitting that into a, you can have that submit to a form somewhere, you can have it submit to a, database somewhere. So especially if you connect this with Cloud. And so this is a very, very simple example. So like something like this, what this would look like is if all we have to do is we copy our Node-RED URL into another browser, and when we copy it into another browser, we just put the endpoint that we have set up. So instead of red, the endpoint that I had set up is hello world. So we should see that web page show up, and that was a web page that we created on that Node-RED server. So if you do go,
so if I try to go to p mystery Node-RED test.
Yep.
P mystery Node-RED test dot my bluemix
.net
/
HW.
Yeah, there we go.
So you can see the web page right there. So it's, there's a lot, like this is very simple, of course,
Cool.
but it's like, you don't need to, I guess, host it on anything. You can just kind of like, especially like when you're doing like hackathons, or when you're like trying to build something really quickly, doing like proof of concepts, it's a great way to, it's really awesome to use Node-RED because you're able to like host and deploy pretty quickly and like show some cool stuff. So yeah, that was a very quick example. I have a few examples that are like kind of using some of the Watson APIs. Like I created an example where I wanted to translate some text into German, and I used like a language translator as my as the node that does that. So I don't need to worry about like, creating an API or hooking up an API when I use Node. I could just kind of create 3 nodes and, put in the credentials that I have and then set whatever language targets that I need to kind of target that and show that text in a different language. So this one's really fun where I'm able to execute, language nodes, And then the one that I really like showing a lot is something I built using the HTTP endpoints as well as WebSockets, where I'm actually hosting a whole application, which is like a chat application that allows people to chat with each other back and forth. So I think Nick and I, we're going to try to chat using the application I created in Node-RED. So like I mentioned, I have a HTTP endpoint where you have created this thing called chat. Within my template, I've added in all the code for my chat right here and my chat box. And then I'm actually going to host that through Node-RED. So instead of HW here, let me go to my chat app. So cool.
I'm
So
gonna try and send you a message.
all right.
That's pretty cool.
Cool. Yeah. So for those of you guys that are online watching, you guys could even go on this right now and like send us a few chats. And this is just like live demo. So yeah, it's pretty cool. You can build some really interesting
You
stuff.
have me impressed.
Okay, well I'm glad, Nick. I'm glad I got you impressed. So let's see what else. Twitter, like I mentioned, Twitter is like an awesome data source to pull information from. Node-RED has these like pre-built nodes to kind of just take that Twitter data, and you can kind of see what that looks like live. So for example, in this flow, I've hooked up the Twitter node to a Twitter account that I have, and if I put in some, if I want to search for like a hashtag or like just even like a some text, we can do, let's do something like.
Is anybody tweeting about Node-RED?
Yeah, we could do Node-RED. I don't know. I hope there's people tweeting about Node-RED. We could do it. Let's just do Node.
You tweeted about Node-RED.
I did tweet about Node-RED. So I did Node. So just to see if this doesn't work. Oh, great. So there are people out there that are like live tweeting about Node.
Languages that
in different languages. So yeah, like you said, like there's like all this data is coming out in like different languages. So you could
we have
even
a lot of languages.
Yeah, so we could put that into like some sort of like language translator to see the other end. So it's pretty cool because I think like if you think about what you could do with this type of stuff, you can do a lot of different AI, especially with like Twitter. You can hook this up to like a tone analyzer and analyze like the tone of tweets, or you can hook this up to like a visual recognition and see like.
I really just want to hook it up to the language translator
Yeah,
so I can see what they're saying.
Exactly. So there's a lot of really interesting things. So, and then one of my favorite other flows that I've worked on is actually this weather insights flow. And this weather insights flow is really interesting because it's like, where do you want to see the weather? I think I've hooked it up to like Berlin's, or I think this might be New York's latitude or longitude, or actually I think that's Berlin's. But you can actually like see the live weather forecast in that region, especially on whatever day you're looking for. So like, what is the weather in Berlin on Friday? Well, it's going to be partly cloudy with highs of 20 and 22 Celsius. So it's pretty neat. So, this is...
Oh, no, it says it.
Yeah, so... And
it translated it to German.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, so we've actually hooked this up to like a speech-to-text, and then we've hooked this up to language translator, which is like translating this weather in German and speaking it out loud. So imagine like, like what would an Alexa or like maybe even like one of those like weather output applications, IoT devices, you could build like a Raspberry Pi that does this, that could tell you the weather. And you could use something like this to tell you the weather, like, or the temperature in your home, or, you could create some sort of conversational application as well. So this is a very basic thing with Node-RED, and, after you kind of get a hang of it, you kind of can see how these flows work and how, like, you can build them. And then you can even think about, like, what other use cases you can use. So yeah, I feel like we should like dive into the drone, because the drone is like You know, really great application, I think. Like, you know, sometimes like we can make, so this is a telodrone. I don't know if you guys have used a telodrone before, but it's actually a really cool drone that is like programmable. If you get this drone, you can actually download the Telo app. And you know, you can try to control the Telo drone with the Telo app, and I think I have it downloaded on my phone here. But you know, the Telo. This is what the Telo app looks like. So you can control the Telo drone with the Telo app. However, it's kind of tricky to control when you're trying to control with an app. So we tried to hook this up with Node-RED just so we could have like more control over it. And you know, the way we did it is like, you know, so Telo actually comes with its own SDK. So it's really neat because it tells you exactly what IP to hook your Teledrone port up to. And so you can create, so it says UDP port. So the perfect thing about Node-RED is that you actually have a UDP port node. So we took that as our input node. So actually, we took that as our output node. So where we've actually hooked up the UDP port of the Telodrone, and we tried to send it a few messages just to see how to control this thing. So, you know, when we go and look into like the Telo commands, you know, we can pass in the string just called command, and then we can also pass in strings like takeoff and land to that UDP port, and we should be able to see what this drone looks like taking off and landing. So it's pretty simple. I'll show you guys what the flow looks like. But the one thing about the Telodrone is that when you connect it, the Telodrone has its own Wi-Fi, and so that's why we have connected. We've actually tried to create this flow using a local version of Node-RED. So when we created the local version of Node-RED, this is what we actually downloaded it locally or installed it locally through our terminal. So you know, we have, this is the terminal that we used where we actually have done like it's really simple to install. It's just like an npm install of Node-RED. So you just do, I think you could do like sudo npm install Node-RED. If you just Google, I actually think I might have slides for it.
I think the instructions are probably on Node-RED website.
Yeah, exactly. So if you go on the Node-RED website, home. Getting started.
Yeah, click that one.
Yeah, so right here, running locally, you would just do a npm install of Node-RED locally, and then you could run Node-RED. And when you run Node-RED, you should be seeing a local version of this editor. And this is what we, we created this local version of this editor to actually play around with the Node-RED Wi-Fi. So I want to kind of show you guys how we can kind of create this flow to control this application. So let's start off with a blank slate. So we want to connect the Telodrone to the UDP port of this drone. So when we connect this guy, first of all, when you turn this Telodrone on, you'll see it blink. Okay. No. Okay. So when you turn this on, you see the Telodrone blink. So when you see that, you're actually able to see the Telo Wi-Fi. So
we can't connect to.
We're not gonna connect to the Telo Wi-Fi, because if we do, we're gonna actually lose break our stream. But I just wanted to show you that there's a Wi-Fi when you turn this thing on. So that's what we need to connect to get this drone working. So, so let's actually first look at what kind of commands that we want to pass into the Tello drone. So looking at the Tello SDK, we want to do, first of all, we want to add in like the command.
Right. So
node.
the command puts it into the mode where we can actually send these commands.
Exactly. So then we first we'll do that simply with an inject. So we'll change the string of this inject into a string, and we'll put in the word command. Cool, right? And then we want to actually connect this guy to the UDP output node.
So every time we inject, it's sending this
Message.
command message to
Yeah.
the Tello.
Yes, exactly. So now we want to hook up this UDP output node. So I have it connected here as well, so I just want to make sure. So we have it connected to this IP and then to this port.
Right,
So
which they tell us that in the Tello SDK.
right. So in the Tello SDK, it's this IP, and then oops, sorry.
Maybe it doesn't like us copying.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't like us copying it. Let me just copy this node that I've created before to Node-RED. So we've created this UDP node before right here.
Well, it's pretty nice to just copy and paste nodes around.
Yeah, that's really cool too. Like if you created something before, you can pretty much drag and drop pretty easily. So we're gonna connect that node here. So like we mentioned, this is the port that, this is the IP for the Tello drone, and then this is the port. So now let's say we want to create let's say we want this thing to take off. So what is the command to take off? So let's look.
Take off.
Oh, simple, take off. Okay, so that's all we need. We need to just insert a string that allows this thing to take off. So let's just put in another inject message. Let's change the input of this guy to string, and let's just write take off. Cool. And now let's hook this takeoff up to that UDP port. And of course, once we take off, we want it to land. So let's try to put another inject node, and let's do string, and let's do land. And we connect this also to the UDP port. So we're going to send it commands to take off, and then we're going to send it to land. So the command, when we click on the command input, that I guess it just like it talks to the UDP port of the node. So it wants to it's just trying to talk to this drone to see, if it's connected and it's on, and then we just send it simple strings to take off and land. So of course, what we're going to do is we're going to deploy this. So I'm not going to run this here because this is, we're connected to the live stream, and I do not want to connect to the Tello drone Wi-Fi because we'll lose our connection. But I have another computer where I created the same exact flow, and this is, just wanted to give you guys proof. Same flow, same computer, different computer, and we will connect to first we'll turn Tello on. Okay, I hope we don't crash it. So it's on. So now we send it command, and now we're gonna try to take off. Oh wait, sorry, we're not connected to Tello Wi-Fi. Oh yeah, we are.
Right, click command again.
Hold on. sorry, we'll have to, let me just install Node-RED again. Or sorry, try on Node-RED again. Reload, of course.
Start Node-RED.
Node-RED, and then connect to, let's refresh this. Oops. Let's refresh this guy, and then we'll connect to Tello.
And then this is on. Yeah.
This is on.
Cool. Send a command. And then take off. Is the takeoff command right?
Yeah.
Technical. Here, let me, I'll turn it off and on again.
Mm-hmm.
All right, connect to Tele Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
All right, send the command. It's not connected. Try connecting to the Tele Wi-Fi again.
Command.
Okay, that worked. Take off. Well, it doesn't want to take off.
It doesn't want to take off.
Ooh, it's really hot.
It's really
It might
hot.
be overheated.
We've definitely turned this drone on too much.
Let's try a different one.
We'll try a different battery. That's a crash earlier. So.
It's probably good.
Yeah.
All right. We can do this.
Yes, we can. We've done this a
All right.
bunch of times. It's just.
Send the command. Oh, maybe that is trying to connect to it to close the app.
That's true. Oh, sorry.
Fabulous, I think. I don't think it close.
Okay, so let's try this again. So the Tele Wi-Fi is on.
Yeah. All right, send the command.
Send the command, and then
There
we go. Okay, so we got it to work.
All right, land
Okay,
it.
now I'm landing. There we go. So that was just 3 nodes, and I think, we had a little bit of technical difficulties
Yeah, I
because
think we were connected to the app, and the app was trying
kind
to
of
talk to
the
it.
drone. So yeah, maybe I should have just shown Node-RED before the app. But regardless, all it really took for us to turn this thing on and land is just like a couple of nodes, and it's really interesting because we can do so much with the Tello SDK. All you can, if you this has video streaming. So, we've been trying to play around with streaming the video and turning the video on. And then, you can also set it up to, give it up by 50 centimeters or down by 50 centimeters. And you can also make this thing flip and go at different speeds. So, I think when you do create a Tello flow, it's really simple. All you really need to do is connect it to the UDP port as well as just give it a few different commands. And I think the last thing I want to talk about, which we'll probably go more into next week, is this flow. And this flow is really interesting because, like I mentioned, we've been trying to get the streaming of this tele drone to work, and we're trying to get this to live stream video. So we actually created our own flow. So like I mentioned, our own node. Like I mentioned before, it's pretty easy to create your own nodes, especially if you don't see nodes that do what you're interested in doing. So we wanted to create a node that actually takes streams video and takes FFmpeg files and streams them live. So we're actually using the video camera of this drone, and we're going to stream that onto a web page. And like I mentioned before, we're just doing a command. We're doing stream on as the command to turn the stream on, and then use that as our live stream. And I think we're going to do some really fun stuff with it next week as well. We'll get the video streaming working, and I think ideally we'd also love to get some object detection working. So being able to detect some objects with drones, with video streaming, that's a really cool use case. And like we mentioned, it's only a few different flows to get that all working together. And
Right.
so yeah, overall it's a really simple application. You can do a lot of fun stuff with this, and you can also build different IoT devices with this as well. So I think that's all I got, Nick.
Yeah. So I think tomorrow Mofi might actually be streaming with someone at a conference, and then the following week it'll be me and Pooja again, and we're going to take this tele streaming a step further and actually show the stream. The reason why we couldn't really show it today is because we have to connect to the tele Wi-Fi, and that breaks our live stream. So next week I think we're going to actually use a Raspberry Pi and a camera instead to do live streaming. We can use the same flow, and we'll get the live stream, and we'll run object detection like Pooja said.
Yeah. So, well, thank you guys so much
Thank you
for
coming.
being part of this, and yeah, I hope you guys like Node-RED. So it's a fun tool to use.